What's good, everybody? So y'all have asked about back training. So today I want to bring you guys that video to where we can talk everything back training and try and figure out some better ways for you guys to add it into your programming. So first off, starting out, what we have to understand is a lot of times, especially when we have these more so bodybuilding type of splits, we will try to move back day into one day out of the week, which is not a problem, but the problem that we have in that is that most people don't understand how many areas comprise the back. So therefore you're not able to train it correctly. So we're going to start from top down and work our way through all the different back muscles as well as the different movements that will be able to help you develop those areas as needed. Now, before we go any further into exercises and the different parts of the back, here are some issues that you could be running into if your back is extremely undertrained or if your lifestyle has just have you a lot more anteriorly dominant, meaning more front side dominant. For one, the rounded shoulder. Oftentimes, if you work at any type of computer desk for extended periods of time throughout your day, this is going to be a problem that you are often going to face. Oftentimes, what accompanies that is a tight neck or tight upper back. Now, although it seems counterintuitive, upper back training is actually something that will help loosen up those muscles, which we'll dive a little bit more into a lot later. Secondly, another issue is that as you go on over time, you'll start to notice that your posture falls forward a lot. It's almost like a slow evolution over time from our younger ages up until the point where we'll hit our elderly years. And we'll start to notice that a lot of elderly people are very lean forward over a cane or needing something to help them stay upright with a back brace of some sort. And this is often due to one, lifestyle, and two, a lack of back training and properly training the back in the areas that's needed. And lastly is poor core stability. Oftentimes when we say core, people think abs. Abs and core are going to be in a sense two different things and need to be trained as so. Our core is almost like that muscular core set. So everything that comprises the abs, yes, but also our obliques as well as our mid and lower back as well. So not developing the back in those ways will also lead to issues in that core stability. So now if we take a look at the back, we have so many different muscles that make it up. We're going to go over our main ones that truly do help us out with our posture and a lot of our strength movements. And let's start off with the traps. Now when we look at the traps, we have three different areas. We have upper, mid, and lower trap. All of these areas can be trained differently, oftentimes depending on how our hand grip is on certain movements as well as where the contraction is taking place. Since we are speaking on the traps, one of the most popular things that people love to do is shoulder shrugs. The question comes in, are you doing the shoulder shrugs correctly even if you're spending a lot of time on it? What you'll often see is somebody try to go and pick up a heavier weight to be able to shrug because in their mind they're thinking that they're doing more for the muscle. But if we understand that time under tension is what helps our muscles grow, picking up a heavier weight to where we're getting little to no time under tension, let alone we're not necessarily lifting the weight properly, it's almost a jerk with the head movement going forward. Therefore we're not really working the traps as we need to. Even for those that may lighten up the weight a little bit, one thing that they have a bad habit of doing is actually rounding the shoulders forward as they do the shrugs. And the reason why this will not become a help to you at all is because when we think about the shrug, what we want to do, if we look at how the upper trap is supposed to work, it helps us retract those shoulders, right? So if we are doing a shrug but bringing the shoulders forward, at that point we're working in the opposite direction of what actually needs to happen during that contraction. So one of the ways that I like to have my clients introduce this and fix this is actually doing a forward facing shrug on a bench. So all you're going to do on an incline bench, almost at a vertical, we're going to knock it down by maybe 1 or 2 steps from there, and I'm going to have them facing towards the bench. And while reaching down and grabbing the dumbbells or barbell if you're using it, then you're going to shrug and retract the shoulders back. But since we have that forward lean, we're also taking away any opportunity for us to kind of shrug forward and bring in that front delt as well. Now when we start to look at the mid traps, it's a little bit lower than what we're looking at in terms of that of the upper traps. But another way that we can do that is also using a similar setup, or even if we use a lean forward bent row. When we think about the mid traps, we want to be able to flare our elbows out a lot further to be able to make sure we're truly retracting that scapula as well. In this position, we're just hitting it in a different area. So instead of us shrugging and coming up more so towards the neck and back from a horizontal positioning in relation to our torso, we're going to be retracting just straight back. working on that scapular retraction. Now, one of my other exercises that I love to work on that also is going to help the lower traps is our bent over row. Now with this bent over row, we can change the hand grip once again to change the elbow positioning. So instead of working the mid traps and coming at a outward elbow angle, what I want to do is have you come back at a 45-degree angle at widest. If we can bring it a little bit more narrow, I'm fine with that, give or take, you know, maybe 10 degrees or so, but nothing that's going to be keeping it super tight, but nothing that's super flared out as well. That way we're able to hit the lower traps and rhomboids at the same time. Now, as we take a step down from the traps, the next thing we're going to look at is the lats. This is probably one of the more aesthetically known muscles within the back, because it really is going to give you that width. And for guys and girls alike, this is something that can truly help you out for the figure that you're looking for, because it does help aesthetically with that thinner waist look that a lot of people are looking for. Some areas that I love to use to develop this is using any type of pull down motion. Now, once again, our elbow placement is going to be a big play into this, but using some type of pull down movement like a lat pull down, or even some pull overs as well with the dumbbell, is something that will heavily help out in the development of this area. Now, if you're a little more limited in those machines, one thing that I feel like cannot be beaten and is one of the best things, if not the best, is doing weighted pull-ups. Now, these can be done in a centric fashion, or if you're able to do it in a concentric fashion, is good as well. But by doing so, you can load this exercise up. This will add some type of variation, and so you can do maybe 2 to 3 heavy reps with some type of weight hanging between your leg. If you have dumbbells available, or if you have some type of belt that you can load up with plates to do the eccentric pull-ups, will be a huge help as well. And follow those up by immediately dropping the weight and maxing out on reps. That'll be a great way for you to first off activate the lats by working on that eccentric motion, and then working it past that point of fatigue to where we're really helping out that hypertrophy within that set. Now, for some of my athletes, one of the things that I love to do that helps them get more of a power explosion component, as well as helping out with the lat development, is doing a hang snatch high pull. Will tax you extremely, but please make sure that if you are doing this, and especially if you're new to this or any type of Olympic lifting or any type of movement that's similarly used in Olympic lifting, that you are also very mindful of your form and your technique, and hopefully being coached, especially at the starting point of you doing this type of exercise. Now, as we move down to the lower portion of the back, and probably one of the more important areas is the erector spinae, or what I like to say is the abs of the back, pretty much. And this is going to be especially aesthetically pleasing for a lot of you ladies. For guys and especially athletes, this will also be very important, because this is a very good indicator, and not always 100% of an indicator of your core strength and your stability and posture, but it can definitely show and tell a lot within the development of these muscles. So when we think about the erector spinae, it is basically self-explanatory to what it says. It's responsible for erecting the spine or straightening it out from a bent position. So once again, oftentimes since we're sitting down so much, this becomes a very underdeveloped muscle. So therefore, we're very weak within our core, especially on a rotational basis, and just being stable in our simple balanced movements as well. One of the best things that you can do for this, and it's one of the most controversial things that everybody likes to talk about now, is the deadlift. Now, what we have to remember is that with the deadlift, not everybody has to be a power lifter, you know, as far as when they do it, but finding out different variations to work this muscle and to work this movement is extremely important within your development, because as far as bang for buck, this is one of the few exercises that you're going to be able to work not only the erector spinae, but also all the other muscles that we have spoken on in this video in one type of movement. Now, if deadlift is something that you are a little bit more hesitant on getting into, for one, as always, find a coach that can be able to coach you up on your form and help you get into it and take it incrementally and just slowly over time. But there are also other movements that you can choose as well, as far as doing reverse hypers, a back extension machine, and slowly loading that with weight over time. Now, I'll always tell all my clients that none of these exercises that we do are necessarily so much an isolation movement that we will never get any type of incorporation with other movements. So think of the deadlift as being something that is similar to a hinge movement as well. So even doing something like good mornings, although it is targeting primarily more of the hamstrings, the back is still involved, especially if we're making sure we keep a rigid spine. So keep that in mind as you're choosing exercises to work out that area of the back and develop that a lot better. So now we have a quick breakdown of the different exercises that we can do. Let's talk about reps. Now with the back, it is very much a area of muscle that can be developed through simple power movements. So it's not necessarily a need to do high reps, but it can be helpful. It all is going to depend on what have you been doing already. Sometimes the biggest thing that we need to see the development that we want that we haven't seen in a while is to simply just switch up what our rep scheme has typically been. So I may have a client that for a while we have been working more high reps in these areas, and we feel like the progress has not been there or either stagnant after we've stuck with it consistently to make sure, okay, it's not some other factor that's holding you off. So we may switch it up and go down to more moderate rep or even just heavier reps for singles, doubles, or triples. Although people do not want to do this because they feel like, oh, I'm going to be loading too much weight in certain areas, or I have a higher chance of hurting myself. You also have a higher chance of hurting yourself if you're just not developed in those areas. So if the high reps have not been working, it's better to try something else to make sure we are preventative in that as much as possible versus just sitting stagnant in the place that we have been. Now, some of the benefits of lowering the reps and also upping the weight and intensity of that exercise is that you can build on a little bit more dense muscle. And ladies, please do not be turned off by this, because although it may sound like that's something that you don't want, that is something that will get you some of the best aesthetic for your figure type that you're looking for. And I'm not talking about trying to look like a bodybuilder. I'm talking about that hourglass figure for even somebody who may just want to look good on the beach. Now, when it comes down to tempo on all these exercises, excluding the conventional deadlift, especially if you're lifting heavy, I definitely would say you want to make sure we are keeping it at a controlled tempo, but most importantly on the eccentric side. That is the reason why I feel like the eccentric pull-ups is something that is so helpful for a lot of my clients, and even the eccentric pullovers. As we're extending that muscle out and having it, we have to understand that during that extension piece, we're also making our body a longer lever, which makes it anatomically a little bit more of a struggle for our muscles to hold that up. But as we're doing so and we're creating that new stressor, we actually are helping it grow in a different way. So tempo, we want to make sure we do keep it controlled. If you can, try and slow down the eccentric as much as possible, but if nothing else, keep a controlled tempo on both sides of the movement, from the eccentric, which is the lengthening, the isometric, which is that holding of that position, and the concentric portion of it, which is the shortening of that muscle. Now, last tip that I want to tell you when it comes down to back training, especially because some of us have become so adamant on constant lifestyle is, as far as being seated at a desk, always on computers, always sitting down, watching TV, things like that, we often have lost that mind-muscle connection within our back. So doing things like band pull apart, or even if you know you're doing some type of pulling motion for that day, priming that muscle by doing speed band rolls are great ways to try and activate those muscles. As well as when we're thinking about that isometric component, working on just holding that muscle movement at the top and really feeling those muscles that we're supposed to be working within that movement. So that way we can really start to build that connection from the mind to the muscle, so we can see more growth over time. But guys, that was our back series for today. Thank you guys so much for all of you who voted and said for this topic. We will be bringing more to you next week on some different areas that were voted on, as far as legs, abs, shoulders. We will be posting up a poll on IG, so please make sure that you vote there, and it should be on Facebook as well, so that way we can see what you really want and how to bring that to you. There's a link down below so you can log into my Discord as well. Please make sure you join, because over the next few weeks we plan on bringing more information, more free information on there. Trust me, you don't have to be a client to join in, but this is a great way for you to be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor as far as building up this business and creating more impact. So hit that link down below. Make sure you follow me on all social media sites as they are tagged down here, and I'll see y'all in the next video.